Yes, I'm doing another one of these again because my last one of these, which compared to my average number of views, did pretty okay, and I enjoyed making it, so I've decided to do it again. And as you can tell by the incredibly obvious title at the bottom of the screen and on the screen, I'm going to be talking about Flashpoint, which is going to be the first solo film based off The Flash, with Ezra Miller returning to play Barry Allen, aka The Flash, once again after Justice League. So the reason I've decided to even make this video is because I'm very excited for this movie, but I'm also quite worried about it as well. So similar to the first time I did this kind of thing, these are just a few tips on what I think DC and Warner Bros. Should do in order to not screw this movie up. So Warner Bros., if you're watching, and I know you're not, here are my tips on how not to screw up Flashpoint. Now first off, you've obviously got to make it Flash's movie. Now upon hearing this, you may think that this is a bit of a no-brainer, seeing as how the actual comic book storyline that the film is going to be named after is titled Flashpoint Paradox, with the Flash's name quite literally in the title. But it's also worth mentioning that while the comic is largely about the Flash himself, the story also features the likes of Batman, Wonder Woman, Aquaman, Cyborg, and even Superman. Which means, as of now anyway, that's basically the entire Justice League. I'm not by any means against the idea of having a Flash movie that could potentially feature the entire Justice League, as you can make a movie about one superhero that still features multiple superheroes other than the protagonists themselves and make it work. We've even seen this done fantastically before with films like Captain America Civil War. While the film still featured nearly every member of the Avengers, as well as introducing two new characters, that being Spider-Man and Black Panther, the Russo brothers still managed to find a way to make it Captain America's personal story, while also managing to balance out the other characters in a story that not only felt fresh and original, but also frickin' epic, am I right? My point is that it is still possible to still make Flashpoint centered on the Flash and still balance out the other characters well enough to make Flashpoint feel well balanced, if that makes sense. While Justice League has been met with mixed reviews from both critics and fans alike, even the film's naysayers can agree that Ezra Miller's performance as Barry Allen, aka The Flash, was one of the film's highlights. Ezra Miller's charismatic charm was good enough to introduce cinemagoers to an innocent, lovable wimp who was still discovering his powers, and seeing as how the Flashpoint Paradox storyline is largely about time travel, this would be the perfect opportunity to explore the Speed Force with more depth. In Justice League, we only got a mere taste of what the Speed Force can do, so the Flash's own movie would be the perfect opportunity to explore it more. I think it would be very cool if the story were focused on Flash trying to figure out how to use his powers properly and fully mastering them, and it would be also a really good opportunity to explore the consequences of his actions when he takes them too far, which brings me on to my next tip. One of the most important elements of the comic book storyline is time travel and the consequences of changing the past. In the comic, Barry Allen runs fast enough to travel back in time to save his mother before she is murdered. By changing this one small event, he changes the entire course of history after that point, and when he returns to the present, everything has gone horribly wrong. For Flashpoint to work, we need to see Barry Allen learning to deal with the loss of his mother, while also, over the course of the film, we as the audience should see the Flash learning how to accept the consequences of his actions, and developing the courage to go back and change things. This plot point, if done right, could give us a very interesting take on the Flash character as a whole, and in a metaphorical sense, it could actually make the Flash the villain of his own film. Seeing as how he causes Flashpoint, I think that would be a really interesting story. Okay, now imagine a scenario where instead of Bruce Wayne's parents getting killed, it was actually Bruce Wayne himself that got killed, and his parents lived to see another day, and Bruce Wayne's father, Thomas Wayne, becomes the Caped Crusader. This interpretation of the Batman is one of, if not the greatest interpretation of the Batman ever put to the pages of a comic book. It has been recently confirmed that the Batman will appear in the Flashpoint movie, so seeing as how the Flashpoint Paradox comic marked his first appearance, this film would be the perfect opportunity to introduce us to a more brutal and much more darker interpretation of the Batman that we haven't seen before on screen. The only potential problem I can see happening is that he might steal the spotlight a little too much, but if he's handled right, then we could have this fantastic character be introduced to this world and still have an awesome Flashpoint movie. Even if he's still a side character, I think it would be awesome to see the Flash interacting with a Batman that is completely different to Bruce Wayne in nearly every way, therefore bringing a totally different spin on the dynamic between Flash and Batman that we got in Justice League. I also think there could be a really interesting side plot about Thomas Wayne's Batman discovering that there's an alternate timeline to his own where his son was the one that survived, and I think it could be a really interesting take on the character Batman and also a totally different spin on the character as a whole. I would love to see this happen, but only if he doesn't take away the spotlight from Flash. I'm probably going to get a lot of hate for saying this, but here's why I think Reverse Flash should not be in Flashpoint at all. For starters, the interactions between Flash and Reverse Flash in the comics rely heavily on a well-established rivalry between the two characters. We haven't even met the Reverse Flash in a DCEU as of yet. So trying to establish a rivalry between these two characters in a movie that is populated by not only the Flash himself but also the entire Justice League, while also trying to do an interesting time travel plot, would only be making this film seem more overcrowded than it could. Also, he actually dies in the comic. I don't really see the point in introducing what is probably Flash's most iconic villain, and then killing him off in the first movie he's introduced in. Now, I do understand that they could change it so that he lives to make further appearances in other films, but even if they do that, I don't think that Flashpoint is the right movie to introduce his character. I would much rather see him introduced in a sequel, or even Justice League 2, where the rumoured villains could be the Legion of Doom. This is a problem I have had with a lot of DC films as of late. I like Batman v Superman, the Ultimate Edition to be precise, but the theatrical version of the film focuses so much on being a setup for Justice League that it essentially forgets to tell a good and cohesive story. So if the rumours are true and Flashpoint is going to be somewhat of a soft reboot for the DCEU, then I think it would be completely pointless to try and set up any future films in Flashpoint, especially considering that the film is more than likely going to be set in an alternate timeline to the current DCEU. So make the film its own beast. Make the film a film that has a story to tell and does just that. I honestly don't want to sit through yet another movie that is just trying to set up the next film in a franchise with tedious references or plot points that go absolutely nowhere, as if to say, oh, don't worry, we'll finish it in a sequel or whatever movie comes next. I just want to go into this movie when it comes out and just watch a movie, not a setup movie. So those are my tips on how not to screw up the Flashpoint movie. I'm really excited for this movie, and I hope to God it's good. But as with all films, you can never be certain if it will be good or bad. So we'll just have to wait and see with this one. I do, however, think they're going in the right direction with the DCEU. I loved Wonder Woman, and I also really like Justice League. So things do seem to be looking up for this franchise, to me at least. So I'm still a little worried about Flashpoint, even if I am still really excited. But if they continue with this direction, I think they can pull it off. Anyway, enough said. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And I will indeed see you guys in the next one. So thanks again for watching, and goodbye.